All right, so we're going to start with 15.1, just evaluating radicals. We'll just kind of play around what radicals are, and towards the end of the chapter, then we start learning how to apply algebra to it, and then solving radical equations. All right, so basically we're just going to determine if there is a real square root that exists for the following numbers. 1a, is there a square root of 81? Perfect. Again, you just think of two numbers that would multiply to that number that are the same. So in this case, 9. Now, there might be more than one way to get to 81, but it has to be two of the same numbers. So here's the next one. Is there a square root for 196? So with 81, the goal is for them to be the same. I think of this as the factoring questions. When we had like x squared minus 25, we had to come up with two numbers that would add to 0, but multiply to negative 25. And every time we were trying to add to 0, we knew these two numbers had to be the same, just opposite numbers. So we would come up with 5 and negative 5. So in this case, it's the same concept. You're trying to find two numbers that would multiply to 196, but they have to be the same. So then I don't have to add to 0, but they have to be the same. Yeah, doubles, like two of them are 9, like the square root of 4 would be 2 and stuff like that. By dividing it by 2. So those two wouldn't work. It has to be the same 2. It would not. You can try it. Yeah, 98 times 98 would probably be around a 4-digit number. Yeah. Because it's times, not add. That's fine. Yeah. Yep. So therefore, 14 times 14. The best way to kind of look at that, in grade school, I believe they had us memorize up to 12. So if you can kind of remember that 12, the square root of 144 is 12, then you can kind of start there and go, all right, is 196 divided by 13? Is it 196 divided by 14? And then kind of go from that direction. But in this case, this would be 14 times 14. That would be your answer. Another cool feature on y'all's calculators, if you hit Control and the button that has like an X squared on it, there should be a square root button. Yeah, and you can just type it straight in. It's second, not Control. Second, and then yeah, yeah. Let's see. I don't know if my computer will work anymore. Hmm. Yeah, I don't know why this doesn't work anymore. Oh, I haven't seen Casio in a long time. I get a cube root. Oh, there it is right there. So it's going to be, so since the square root is yellow, you're going to want to hit the shift button that's yellow. So you'll do shift and then that button. And you're able to type whatever number you want. So in this case, 196. Absolutely. So that makes this process a little bit easier, which will make the process of when we get to the harder math a lot easier as well. So try this one real quick. Square root of 49. 7. Perfect. Last one. Square root of negative 49. Test it. Remember, it has to be the same. So that would be negative 7 times negative 7, which would be, does say error. Because remember, it has to be two of the same numbers. And if you make them both positive or both negative, the result will still be positive. So there are no two numbers out there that you can multiply that would give you a negative because they have to be the exact same number. So in this case, you would just say not possible. There is more math to do with this problem, but that's going to be, I think you'll see it in pre-cal if you go that far. Trying to see what your homework does. Yeah, it just says it'll say not a real number, which I think is what your calculator says too. Not factorable. There you go. So it's one of those things. So either not possible, not a real number, but you can't take a square root of a negative number. That's the moral of the story. Yeah. All right. And then they try to make it a little bit harder. And they're going to ask you questions like this. What's the square root of 9 over 64? Now, here's what's cool about this. One, you can type it straight into your calculator and it will produce the answer for you. Or if you do it by hand, you can split these two fractions up as the square root of 9 over the square root of 64 and treat them as two separate questions. So like, what's the square root of 9? 3. And what's the square root of 64? There you go. So then the square root of 9/64 is 3/8. Yeah. And again, you could type it in the calculator as well and do the square root of 9 divided by 64 and all that stuff. Make sure you type it in correctly. I find that to be a little bit harder because sometimes, depending on where your parentheses are and now if the square root go all the way, I like to break it up a little bit like this. I'll give you a chance. Then you have to now convert that into a fraction, which menu, yeah, math, that's it. I always want to say menu. So I would assume for y'all's when you hit the square root button, you would hit 9 and then the division problem and then 64. Just make sure that that square root symbol keeps traveling with you. A lot of times, some calculators, you'll type like the square root. Let's say you put 9, and then now you have divide by 64. And what you just produced is now the square root of 9, then to divide that by square root of 4. You want that square root to go all the way. So you take the square root of both, the whole fraction. That's the only thing to watch out for. I tried this one. Negative square root of 0.0016. Where is the negative located? Outside. I cannot do it when it's on the inside, but I can do it when it's on the outside. A positive? Oh, I got you. So this result will be a positive, and then you apply a negative, which would make the answer become negative. Just got to figure out what the square root of 0.0016 is. I think if you go and hit the 3 lines, you can turn it to scientific. The square root button? You got an iPhone, right? I think if you go up here to the, oh, it's a calculator button now. Then go to scientific. Yeah, that's because there's an imaginary 2 there to represent square root. But I think you might have to, you have to type the number for, oh no, you type that and then 0.0016. No, mine's in parentheses. Is yours not? Mine just open parentheses for me. Yeah. If not, you can always add the parentheses. It did. It should give you 0.04, which I think your homework takes it as a decimal since it started as a decimal. But if you do convert it into a fraction, be 4 over 100. So 1 over 25. Is that what you said? So yeah. The homework did take this as a decimal when you start with a decimal, but your homework does specifically say write the answer as a fraction, write the answer as a decimal. Ah, Yes. So really, this is actually 0.04, but then because of this negative, it then just applies to the answer. Is that right? Oh. Yeah, they typed it in their calculator and got -1/25. Yeah. Mhm. It depends on what the homework. So the homework that I saw, when you start it with a decimal, they took the answer as a decimal. But when you start it with a fraction, they want the answer as a fraction. That's what I've noticed on the homework. Yes, it ends up being a negative because there's a negative in front of the problem. So what we did is we typed this in the calculator and then applied the negative at the end. But you can technically type it just like this as well, and it'll still pop out -0.04. We good? And so basically on this one, and what it comes out to is actually 0.04 times 0.04 does give you 0.0016. Because the way decimals work when you multiply, you just multiply as is. So in this case, that says 4 times 4, which is 16, and a whole bunch of zeros. And then because there's 4 decimals, you have to move this 1, 2, 3, 4 times. It becomes 0.0016. All right. So now we got our little calculator training going. That's how we do with these next questions. So now it's going to ask you stuff like, oh, okay. So it's going to give you questions like this. It says the square root of 67 is equal to 8.1854. Justify that answer. And you can't just type that into the calculator and say, well, it's because the calculator told me. So what it is square root of 67 is going to be greater than 8 because what square root number would give me 8? 64. So it's because the square root of 64 is less than the square root of 67, which would then be less than what would be, so that's 8 times 8. What's 9 times 9? 91. So then they'll say, this is a reasonable answer since the square root of 7 is between the square root of 64 and the square root of 81, which is 8 and 9. Or a better way you could probably approach it is probably approach it this way. Let's approach it this way. I'll bring it back. Don't worry. Since our answer was between 8 and 9, start off like this. Like this number is between 8 and 9. So then figure out, well, 8 times 8 is, so this becomes square root of 64. 9 times 9 is, and so that's what it's looking for. That's its justification. The 67? Oh, that's 8.1854. Yeah, this is just saying, hey, this is the answer. Does it make sense? And this is the kind of justification it's looking for. Well, yeah, this is between 8 and 9, which is between square root of 64 and square root of 81. Questions like this can be difficult because there's not much. I mean, you're kind of doing math, but it's really you're almost proving the answer. Like it gave you the answer, and then you're trying to justify it. All right, so it does go into cube roots. So we'll do some practice typing cube roots into our calculator. So try the cube root, and a cube root, you know, is because it's a square root, like the little bitty 3 on the outside. So it's going to ask, what's the cube root of 64? So again, you can use your calculator or ask yourself what number times itself 3 times would give you 64. So there will be it's going to be like X square root type thing so that you can have it like place a new index. It is 4. It's like 4 times 4 is 16, and 16 times 4 will give you 64. because now we're trying to determine the same number that would be multiplied 3 times that would produce that number. So for you, it would be oh, there it is right there. Number 4. Yep. Gotcha. I was like, I don't see that button. But you found it. Perfect. Did you find it as well? Oh, let's see. It's going to be this one here. See, it has an X. What that does for us is when we do shift this right. Oh, oh, gotcha. So then shift this right here. It allows you to put that 3 as an inbox first. And then now you can go inside and type the number that you want, which in this case is 64. So it's just going to, so regular square root is shift this button to get that guy. And then the cube root would be shift this guy so you can type a 3. Mm-hmm. All right, so the cube root of 64 gives us 4. And again, it's because this time 4 times 4 times 4 would produce 64. That's how that's broken up. All right, so part B, try the cube root of 50. Oh, gosh, I got ahead of myself. Sorry, we'll come back to this question. Wrong one. I was like, that doesn't make any sense because we haven't even talked about that yet. Try cube root of negative 125. We'll come back to number 5 in a second. That was number 5 I actually showed you. Yes. A C button or the C button or something like that. What is it? Any other answers? Yes. Cube root of negative 125. Be negative 5. So square roots, we couldn't have a negative inside. Cube root, you can actually have a positive or a negative. And here's the reason why. Negative 5 times negative 5 would be what? Multiplication. Ooh, 2 negatives make a what? Positive. So it'd be a positive 25. Now take that positive 25 and now multiply it by another negative 20, a negative 5, and you get a negative 125. So in this case, 3 negatives do produce a negative. So you can get a negative answer for cube roots, not square roots. All right, try this one. Cube root of 1 over 1,000. On this one, your homework's going to want a fraction. 1 over 10. And just like the square root, you could separate this as the cube root of 1 over the cube root of 1,000. So the cube root of 1 would be 1 times 1 times 1, which is 1. Cube root of 1,000 would be 10 times 10 times 10, which is 1/10. Or if your calculator originally give it to you, give it to you as 0.1 or 0.1, or I don't know if it gives you the 0 or not. But on this one, since you start with a fraction, your homework's going to want the fraction. All right. But math wouldn't be math if stuff wasn't always pretty, right? So in this case, on the very end of your homework on this one, it's going to ask you to find the square root of 45. That's it. I forget on your homework. I think it goes to 4 decimal places, but it'll tell you. So in this case, if you put the square root of 45, you'll get 6.7082 and then a whole bunch of numbers. Just pay attention to the homework and see what it says on how many decimal places. But I'm pretty sure it said 4. You would keep it as a decimal. There is no fraction for this one. So this one's just a regular square root. So now that you know cube root, at the end of your homework, it's going to throw different ones at you. Square root, cube root, square root, cube root. This to make sure you're typing it in correctly in your calculator. Yep, the square root of 45 would be equal to 6.7082, blah, 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 blah. Yes, correct. Hmm. Your homework tells you. I want to say it said 4 decimals, but just pay attention to what it says because it could say 3 or 4, somewhere around that area. Yeah, so 4 decimals would be 4 numbers past the decimal. You would include the whole number. Or it could try to trick you and say go all the way to the thousands place. And then, yeah, and then you got to remember that this starts off at the tenths because we don't have a once. So this goes tens, hundreds, thousands, or maybe it says go to 10,000. So then you know it's 4 decimals. So it could do something like that. But it'll tell. But to answer your question, the homework, the directions tells you how far it wants you to go. Hmm. Yeah, that's what usually gets a lot of students is because they'll round in the wrong spot. Yeah. Ooh, your calculator does that for you? That's going to come in handy in the next section because in the next section, what I'm going to do is in this homework, it just wants the decimal answer. But on the next homework, it's going to want you to keep it as a radical, but a simplified radical. And so to kind of get ahead of where we're at, what 2 numbers multiply to 45? 9 and 5. And then what is the square root of 9? 3. And then we don't have a square root of 5, and 5 can't break down any further, so it stays inside the radical. So this is the same answer, and the fact that your calculator does that is going to be nice because the rest of our calculators do not. And when I teach pre-cal, yeah, so that's a good one. Yeah. But in this homework, it just wants the decimal. So I'm assuming on yours, can you hit enter again and does it do anything? It isn't like, oh, it does? Oh. Well, for this homework's sake, calculator needs to at least be able to turn it into a decimal. Yeah. Yeah. Let's see if I do this. So 3 times. Yeah. I oh, okay, cool. It's this SD button. So you hit that, converts to a decimal, and goes right back to your. I don't know what SD stands for. I'm gonna go with standard decimal. I really don't know. But you just hit that button, and so depending on what the question's asking for, it's asking for a decimal, just hit it so it turns into a decimal. If it wants the simplified expression, so we'll see in the next section, then you can hit that button back so it turned back to its original answer. That's gonna be a nice feature. All right, try this one. Ooh. Cube root of 50. Good. I think the homework says go to 4, but it may say write as many too. I'm almost positive it said 4. At least the ones I did. 4-0. Yeah. And then last one for this section, try 5 times the square root of 30. So this is, notice how big this 5 is versus these little 3s. This is going to be a big 5 times the square root of 30. Yeah, if you typed in square root of 30 first, you could multiply that by 5. Yeah. There you go. So I think for your phone, I would do the square root of 30 first and then times that answer by 5. For its calcu. Oh, it's the square root of 30 times square root of 30 because the 5 is on the outside. So you can't do 5 times 30. You have to do 5 times the square root of 30. And the square root of 30 is 5 point something. Yeah. Now multiply that by 5. Perfect. And that's what it is. Mhm. So with a cell phone, I would use the square root first, and then because a cell phone is a lot more like a 4 function calculator. So yeah. Okay. All right. All right, let's take a 5-minute break and we'll start.